Welcome to this week's podcast episode. As you know from the title of this podcast, what we're all about is trying to bring out the best in people and companies. So this is not simply about making money. This is about creating better communities when people are less stressed, when they are doing what they were made to do, when they really find a great fit in a company. It helps the individual. It also helps the business because it becomes more efficient and gets more done. And this also helps our country. So in a funny way, I see what I'm doing as very patriotic. I love creating stronger communities, and that can be at the family level, that can be at the neighborhood or the city level, but that can also be larger. I really believe that this makes the world a better place. When we know ourselves, when we know the people around us, when we are putting people in positions to succeed and to be the best they can possibly be. To me, everyone wins in those situations, and that's something that I truly do get excited about. I've always loved helping people, whether it's addictions and mental health or working in homeless shelters or adult group homes. I've done a lot of maybe odd things. And what I found is that the biggest reason people struggle with stress is that on a consistent basis, they aren't doing what they care about. They aren't living with purpose. They aren't doing what satisfies themselves deep down. And while an objective tool is not the be-all, end-all of finding your purpose, it can go a very long way to pointing people in the right direction. And that's what I believe Traits does. Again, today is a little bit different. I'm going to be interviewing Mike. Mike is the president, the owner of Concord Consulting. Concord Consulting is the company that produced and is consistently improving Traits, the objective psychometric assessment that we use. Today, we're going to be covering the three biggest objections that we hear with individuals or companies when we're talking to them about using an objective tool in their business. I'm just going to remind you from the outset, an objective tool cannot do everything for a business. It's not a one-size-fits-all, fix-all for every problem that ails a business. Having said that, it can be a fantastic direction pointer to where problems lie, as well as, because this is what it's all about, as well as finding the strengths, finding solutions. That's what we're after, is not simply point out problems. It's finding something that fixes the problems. I truly hope you enjoy this interview with Mike. At the end, I've got a bit of information, and as always, know this. I'm going to put my information in the show notes. Feel free to reach out. If you have any questions about anything that comes up in these interviews, if you have questions about how you could potentially use this in your business, if you simply want to run some ideas past me or think through some future podcast ideas, feel free to drop me a note. I would love to do that. And I will finish this here rather than putting it at the end of the episode today. If you are enjoying this, if this has value for you, please drop us a like. Please put this in your favorites. Please subscribe to this. That makes a big difference for us in that we're not making any money from this podcast. We would love to produce content. And when we see that people are appreciating it or certain ideas, we can then double down on those ideas and help you out. Thank you so much. Enjoy the episode. Mike has been an interview that we've done in the past. He was one of the first 4 interviews that we did here on the podcast. I'm hoping to do another interview with him right now again. And this one has a specific purpose. Mike and I were talking about a week ago, and we were talking just about how some people have objections to using this tool for their business and kind of things that people need to get over in order to really make use of this, because there are some myths about psychometric assessments in general, specifically this one, and then how can it be used? We really want to bring out the value of this and make sure that companies are able to make use of that value to improve performance in their companies, for employees, for themselves as leaders, and everywhere in between. Mike, welcome. Thank you for coming and joining me again. Let's start off with just kind of that first objection that we talked about, and that is, so much of the time, and this is my own experience, I was so tentative to think about using a psychometric assessment. My background in psychology, I hate psychometric assessments, generally speaking, because I found them to be much like horoscopes. They put people into small boxes. And then every time I read through the report, it was like, well, yeah, like I can also read this when I go to a Chinese food restaurant. So why am I making use of this? What value does it have? How would you answer that objection that people have?
Yeah, well, so many tools that are out there these days are really more consumer-based tools. So more about just a little bit of understanding about a person, simplifying the world into something that really is pretty basic to read, to understand, and to get a little bit of information from. There are, when you think about the world, and we certainly talk a little bit about this in this idea of communication styles. You can really sort of, to a degree, break people down into different communication styles, typically 4 different communication styles, and talk about things from a very basic level. But of course, within each one of those 4 sort of basic styles, that people are quite different inside of them. And so a lot of tools tend to use this you're either this or that sort of approach to things. And again, we've talked about it before in the past. Traits leverages scales. And so by using scales, we can get far more depth into really understanding somebody and understanding the implications of how different traits interplay against each other, and provide even more information about a person. So lots of people think of these things as tools like this as horoscopes, or just not giving enough information. And generally speaking, they're right, because the most popular tools out there really are that. But traits is something different.
Yeah, something that actually won me over with this is, one, instead of 4 boxes or 16 boxes, there are no boxes. That this is a mosaic. It's painting a picture with a lot of little tiles that creates more specificity and definition to this picture that it's painting for me initially, but of other people. The second thing that won me over was that instead of, again, 4 boxes and this is where the horoscope comes from, right? It comes from being oversimplified. So you have to make generalizations about people. Becoming more specific. You talked about that scale, but becoming more specific, part of that for me is looking at 2 dots in concert to each other. So 2 personality traits, 2 parts on the scale where somebody is. So there's already a lot of complexity. Now you're looking at those 2, the combination between those 2, and saying, what does this also say? So again, it's becoming far, far, far more specific. And to me, that's the kryptonite to horoscopes is as soon as you become specific, you're either right or wrong. Which horoscopes want to stay away from. They're making generalizations that people go, yeah, that kind of fits. That's not what we get with this when people are experiencing it. Tell me maybe a bit about some of the experiences you've had with people having aha moments.
Yeah, well, again, kind of going back to that, I've used this example with you before and with others before. It's again, if we're going to talk about weather and we're going to say something like hot, cold, it's just so limiting in terms of the way that in terms of describing something. But again, that's what lots of tools do. Where what traits is doing is really talking about, well, it's 27 degrees, humidity is at 80%, and the wind is blowing at 15 kilometers an hour. And that's what looking into and learning how the different traits actually interplay against each other. Now you get a far more insight about that individual when you add those different dimensions to the conversation. So just a whole different sort of way of approaching and getting information and understanding people, really to try and avoid getting them into these different boxes ultimately that people just really don't believe in ultimately, because they are so generic: hot, cold.
It is so much fun for me to experience this real time with somebody where they go, like, nobody knows me like this. And we're looking at dots on a page based on experience and what that tells us of where people are and how they react, and how, like you said, they communicate, and how they interact with others, how they experience life, and how they get the most out of themselves, where they've seen that in the past. So it's always really exciting for me. And just to be clear with everyone listening to this is not about trashing anything else. That it's not the purpose. I lived in China for 8 years. I'm not trashing Chinese food. Like the purpose of this is not to trash other assessment tools. What the purpose is to to actually show how this is different, because it is significantly different. One area of difference is the applicability. So let's maybe jump into that. So a lot of people are like, well, these tools are too simplistic. Really, how can I get the most out of this, or what is this actually going to show me about myself? How would you answer that?
Yeah, or to add one more layer to that is the idea of how can this really tell you all that much about me,
Yeah,
there's so much more to the story behind the traits that are there, and there, everybody's got their own story, everybody's got their own life experiences that they bring to the table, and education or experience that they've had in their lives. But at the end of the day, some people are oriented to wanting to make decisions more quickly than others. Some people inject more change into their life than others. I always find it so interesting, actually, that from a subjective side, when you sit down and you have a conversation with somebody, and I just did this on Thursday. I was sitting down with somebody whose traits I know, and I made the comment of, I love change, and always like moving from one thing to the next, and always keep things kind of moving along. And he said, I know, I'm exactly like that. And so, like, that connection piece that people love to be able to have, right? And so if I was hiring somebody like that based on the words that he's giving me, I like change too, and I'm just like you, Mike, and all of those types of things. But then if I hired him and I didn't have his traits and put him inside of the job, I noticed that he is significantly different. His version of that is significantly different than me, and so it really kind of pulls things where I realized after making the hire that this really was not a very good choice. So the context behind the way that we interpret the world is so key to figuring out. So, anyways, when I sort of think of people, giving this pushback around the tool of, why, why are you doing this with me? And there's so much more to the story. Yes, there's so much more to the story, but there are some really core pieces that are really critical to understand about somebody in terms of their almost, again, their hardwiring about the way that they do things. Yeah, so if we need somebody that's going to inject change, let's do that. Let's bring them in and let's make sure that their traits are going to cause them to do those types of things at the level that we want. Then we have to go and learn the story. We have to figure out all of the things that are in the background of that individual, and what makes them who they are, and we have to meet them, we have to interview them, we have to spend lots of time with them, all that type of thing. But we know in their core, this idea of change is going to be at the level that we actually need it to be inside of the business.
in the position that, yeah, exactly, that's needed. And the analogy that comes back is the weather analogy that you just talked about. There is a significant difference between 60 and 80% humidity. There's a significant difference between 35 and 38 degrees. If you're walking around outside, even though they're both hot or they're both humid, they're very, very different. And in the type of person, I'm thinking about my daughter. My daughter loves wind. I like wind. She loves wind. So like it can be blowing her over and she's excited. Whereas me, like if it cools me down, I'm happy. If it gets any further, I'm unhappy. And I think about that with employees again in their environment and thinking if a situation is taking place that they don't enjoy, that they don't appreciate, that they're not fit for, that doesn't align with who they are, it's not going to be something that's enjoyable. It's going to create stress. Yeah, can you maybe share a little bit more about that, about the stress that this brings to people when it's not a fit?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the whole idea of joining an organization and fitting into a culture, we've all had jobs in our lives where we've gone in and if that's a position of project management, if that's a position of manager, if it's a position of sales, and we start to say, geez, it just it's not, that doesn't feel comfortable here. It's the business is doing something, and I had that experience years ago, Mark, with a company that I was a part of where change and growth, they would say, yeah, we like to change and we like to grow, but when that's at 3% a year, like that's just not exciting and not engaging. And so they kind of sold me on that when I joined them. But then I walked in and it was kind of like, boy, this organization's, the speed of it feels like about a quarter of what I want to actually sort of move at. And so people have that get that when they walk into organizations. And again, because it's a subjective conversation that people are having and trying to do the back and forth on, and they're just not kind of dialing in enough to be able to, number one, the employer knowing what it is that they're looking for, and the employee really trying to sort of figure out where do they fit in the world best. So traits really helps to be able to zoom in for both the employer and the candidate, that to make sure that there's a good match, and make sure that people are going to be engaged in the work that they're doing every single day, as opposed to either having to speed up too much or slow down too much in the jobs that they're having to do.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest benefits to me, is it's taking something that is extremely subjective. And like you said, somebody says, I like change too, we're the same. It's taking something that is subjective and really difficult to suss out, or to see clearly, and it's making it objective. Again, we can always test it out. If somebody doesn't go, hey, this doesn't seem to align, they can always test it out, which is a lot of fun too, because we see, well, over time it actually does align, and people understand more about themselves, which I find a lot of fun too for myself. It's probably disconcerting for some. Okay, let's talk about the kind of the third myth or objection that people typically have, that they just go, this is a question in my head, and that is, people don't like being put into a box. As soon as I've got this assessment, I am A, B, C, D, E, F. I'm this type of person. I don't want to be put in a box. I want to make sure that I can still learn and grow in my organization. I want to be promoted. I don't want to be stuck in the same spot, or all of those questions that can come up. How would you typically answer somebody that has some of those thoughts or questions?
Well, I think it sort of goes to the maturity of the organization that they're walking into, to start with, or as part of all of this. When people are putting me into a box, well, the organization is not dealing with things very maturely if they're doing that. Again, we're not trying to put people into boxes. That's number two. We're using scales of behavior to try and help people understand. So it's not this or nothing sort of a thing, or trying to put somebody into something where they just can be vilified in that position or in that box. When we're leveraging the tool, it's all about just creating this knowledge around how different traits and different degrees of traits show up in the world, and I always talk about it from a strength standpoint. What are those strengths that cause you to do the things that you do and can do so well? And I think that's just so important to understand about individuals, about other team members. Awareness of others is such a key thing that just is almost sort of lacking, and it's kind of like, oh my goodness, yeah, that's the way, that's the reason that person does those things. Now that I understand that, I'm not constantly trying to fix it. I'm not trying to, hold something against them because of that. I understand that there's a challenge here, or a strength here that exists, and I have more awareness of it, and now I can come up with strategies to address those things, and you and I can work together to get over those. That when somebody says you're going to put me in a box, no, we're not putting you in a box. And I know there's a big long story that shows up outside of these results that's really critical to understand about somebody. But I do know that that individual is motivated to do these types of things, and so I'm going to try and put them into positions where they can leverage those strengths on a more continual basis, as opposed to just trying to fix them in the job that they're doing, to try and take those things out of them, which just is such a terrible thing to do to somebody.
Yeah, that's something that frustrated me to no end, was being put into a box over and over and over, and going, but that doesn't fit, and I know it doesn't fit. And the things that I'm reading about this are not a fit for me 60% of the time, even if 40% of the generalizations are correct. So that was something that graded against me. I found the exact opposite with traits for myself. When I experienced them, I didn't feel like I was being confined. I felt freedom for the first time in a very long time. When I experienced this, I was going through transition in my life, transition in work, and I was extremely stressed with exactly what was going on in life. I was taking on really, really large projects for myself, and this allowed me to go, oh, hold on. These are the things that probably, if I'm honest with myself right now, have always been true. That there are things that I appreciate, there are things that I excel in, And why am I working so hard to do things that I'm just awful at? One quick example is details. I am not a details guy. And I'm kind of a big picture thinker. I like thinking about patterns and ideas and how does this project out this way or that way. I was doing a lot of detailed work at the time and I hated it. And because of that, I was actually really disliking life at the time. And I was just looking for something really, really different. This gave me the freedom to see that and to pursue what I'm excellent at rather than working at things that I'm not good at and were providing just a lot of frustration in my life. So for me, it was the exact opposite. It wasn't confining. It was freeing. And I loved that aspect of it. Okay. One thing that I want to cover before we go here, usually we allow somebody to put in a plug. I want to allow you to put in a plug here. Traits has been used in my experience, short experience compared to you. You've been around this for 20 years. So for me, I've seen this extremely useful for an individual, for a company with 5 employees. I've also seen this being used with companies with tens of thousands of employees really, really, really well. Having said that, what do you think is maybe a sweet spot where a company can go, this is where we're at, this is where we want to go, and this is kind of the ideal tool for us? What are some of those things that jump out to you when I say that?
Yeah, well, we certainly have a client sweet spot, but in terms of where this can be useful, it really is so wide ranging. And sometimes I sort of think that's what makes or what shows something to be effective is if it can be applied in all sorts of different areas in life. And when we're doing individual work, we've done work with students that are trying to figure out what they want to do in terms of university. So helping to be able to sort of guide them a little bit in terms of what they should be looking for, classes that they might enjoy taking, those types of things. We've used this with small businesses that are trying to just find the right person and sort of have got less ability to get it wrong. They need to get it right more often than not, and get the right person in the right seat. And then growing organizations are really where this just grabs a foothold. So 50 to 500 employees. Typically, the owner is the one that buys it because they figure something out about the way that their people are wired and how different traits are required in different positions, and they lock onto that, and then they bring that into their organization, and off they go from there. And we've seen so many businesses that start literally at that 50 to maybe 500 employees, 350 employees, and we've had clients that have grown to as big as 22,000 leveraging this. We've had many businesses that again get this concept, this idea, and then just grow their businesses because they get the right people in the right seats more often than not. They leverage those strengths of those individuals in bigger and better ways, and they grow. They provide so much more to our economy and to our communities because they just have cultures of people that are engaged in the work that they're doing, and off they fly.
Yeah, the keywords that kind of jump out to me from what you're saying, as well as clients we've been working with, one is high growth. If a company wants to experience growth, we all know that there's a lot of potential pitfalls with high growth. This starts to help with some of those. Another keyword would be like hiring or retention, or problems with rehiring people because it's just not a fit. Having a lot of people that are just kind of stagnant in a business or getting stuck in certain ways, like all those kind of jump out to me, and is problems that Traits starts to really shine a light on and say, okay, this is what we need to work on. There's still work involved, right? It's not you bring an assessment that the world is solved, but this provides that first step to start seeing where problems exist and what you can do about them, avoiding future problems, putting the right people in the right seats that we talk about so much of the time. That all works.
Absolutely does, and all good places to be able to use it. And fast growth is always the place where the pressure is on, and where people need to be aligned and doing the right things. And so that it's always what creates the business lives and dies on its people. And so the more we know about their people, and the more we get them into the right positions, and leverage them in the right ways, the better it is for everyone.
Excellent, Mike. What is the best way for somebody to contact you or to contact Concord or Traits regarding an assessment, or maybe looking into some things?
Yeah. Well, we've got our website at traits.com, and there's a contact page that we have there. You can also catch us at info@traits.com, and you can email me, Mike at traits.com. All great ways to be able to get in touch with our business, and check out a few of the things that we do, and happy to have a conversation with anyone.
Excellent. We're going to be putting those into the show notes. So if you missed that, feel free to just click on the link below you, and you'll be able to arrive at those sites or the email addresses. Mike, thank you for doing this. It's good to do this every once in a while with you.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you, Mark. Always a pleasure to chat with you, and look forward to the future conversations.
Talk to you soon.